next session is Jeopardy, even though it will seem like alcohol. Shortly, there will be champagne and strawberries served, and we are going to have a grand prize of a bottle of single malt scotch, Oban, one of my favorites, 14-year. So if you have a desire to be put on the spot at the end of this panel, the first 6 people who go talk to, I don't see him, someone in the back of the room. Oh, there you are. Clipboard raised. Sign up. First 6 people or fewer will compete to get this bottle of scotch, and also some turntable thing, which also seems cool, but was too heavy to carry out here, and didn't go with our alcohol theme. So, this is Jeopardy. We are going to use this as a device to, talk about the future. And what we're going to be showing under these categories is not predictions. We're not in the prediction business, but scenarios that could happen, completely random scenarios, but ones that will completely disrupt the industry as we know it. And so our panelists will then ask the questions that will arise and talk about what the world would be like if this scenario happened. Now, I'm not going to make them answer in the form of a question. I'm not like Alex that way, but we'll start the game with Sherry. Sherry, which category would you like?
I think I'll take viewing behaviors for $2,000. And I want to use the money for shoes, just so you know.
I don't have the sound effects, by the way, sorry. And there's no daily double, so don't worry about that either. Oh, we do have sound effects. Thank you. Excellent. Oh, you know what? Before we do this, I forgot to introduce the panel. So let's go ahead and do that. I promise alcohol was not part of what I imbibed prior to this. Okay. While we do introductions, feel free to mosey over to the champagne table and come take your seat again. All right, let's start here with Sherry.
Well, in case you haven't figured it out yet, my name is Sherry. Sherry Brennan. I work for Fox. I work in the television networks distribution group, and my focus is on digital distribution strategy, basically helping the company figure out how to license content into all of the new platforms and emerging business models, et cetera. Also focused a lot on research and trending, and I was really hoping you were in the prediction business, but I'm sorry to hear you're not.
We're not.
Hi, I'm Pat Lafferty. I'm the CEO of BBH, which is an advertising agency, have offices in New York and LA. And I've also spent about 6 years in the TV world at Discovery Networks and Travel Channel in between advertising stints.
Hello, it's David Porter. I'm at Microsoft, and I'm responsible for video, sales, and strategy.
Hi, my name is Dawn Holliday Mack. I'm with FactoryMade Ventures. We're an entertainment incubator out of Santa Monica, California. Our most recent launch was El Rey Network that debuted in December of 2013, and we just recently had our first original series air and complete. What I do for the company is I am in charge of strategy and consumer insights for all of our companies.
I'm John Penney, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Starz. Starz is a premium television network with 55 million subscribers in the United States, and we're transforming the company to hopefully be a 21st century premium television provider.
Wonderful. Okay, now back to the game. Sherry, what do you think about this scenario? We have some supporting facts because we're not in the prediction business, but we are in the consumer insights business. And recently, Frank Maggot Associates, the company I work with, worked with the USC, and we are doing a longitudinal tracker. And some of the things that we think could point to a world like this is that even though live TV viewing is still dominant mode, there is definitely a move toward people streaming and downloading content. And as everyone's talked about in many panels today, the younger consumers definitely are looking to stream much more frequently. So what do you think, Sherry?
Well, so this is a reality that's kind of here already. I don't know if it's 80% for very many shows, but I'm sure it is for some. And we obviously are seeing a lot of differences in time shifting versus live based on the kind of content you're talking about. Live sports is like 99% watched live. Reality TV is watched more live than serial dramas are. I think we all know people like to binge, and I think that's just going to increase over time. So I think this is a reality we have to get used to. The big challenge here is how do you monetize time-shifted viewing in an environment where people are able to fast forward through ads, or where if you're not able to fast forward through ads, in many cases, in many windows, the ad load's actually lower than live linear, and so that disrupts your ability to monetize content. So I've been actually here the last couple days talking to several different people about this issue, and I would challenge everybody in the audience who's thinking along these lines to start thinking a lot about new advertising formats, new ways of getting advertising around shows. I think the 30-second spot, you might have an opinion about this, I think the 30-second spots days are probably numbered to some extent, and I'm really focused on thinking about new ways of monetizing through advertising in just, it's like I'm on a fishing expedition. So that's one of the big things I'm thinking about right now.
Great. Let's open it up for discussion. What do you think, Pat?
Well, I think ads have to be great to be watched. I mean, there's a lot of bad ads to start. I mean, so there's a lot of ads that, I'm in the business and I'll fast forward through a bunch of them because they're not worth watching. So I think the quality of the advertising is one thing. Absolutely, there has to be a variety of different ways for a brand to get out there and have a relationship with folks, and I think we might talk about a couple of those in an upcoming question. But I think
Not
quality
that he has
first.
any idea about that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think quality first, and then lots of different ways to build that relationship beyond ads. Absolutely.
I think it's an exciting future because what it portends is people able to watch more content on their own time for the types of content that Sherry mentioned, especially around scripted and otherwise. I think the question about advertising is one that we often don't really sort of drill deeply enough into, not to say that what was said is in any way not where the business needs to go in terms of more engaging ads. The one thing I think we have to think about is that a large portion of the roughly $65 billion in TV advertising goes to fund the programming that studios create. And there's always this idea that, you just make more hits, or can't you just buy, the best shows and leave the rest to go fallow somewhere. But the truth is, it's just like VC in Northern California. There's a very low hit rate, and you have to produce a lot of shows or have a lot of at-bats, if you like sports analogies, to see success. So one of the issues that we have with this question, one of the questions that we have with this answer, I should say, is what is going to be the transitional business model support for the creation of, at least if you want to focus on the scripted piece, storytelling in the forms that so many people in this country, whether you're watching premium television, basic cable, or broadcast, and the amazing shows that are on each, what's going to fund that? And how will that end up being a combination, I believe, of television advertising, subscription, more pay-per models potentially, even direct marketing approaches. So it's a good answer to put a lot of questions into the mix.
What about scheduling? I mean, do you have to think about, especially with so much of content being DVR'd, is there traffic jams? I mean, are there too many things that are great on Sunday night and there's just not enough DVRs that can do more than two things at once? I mean, does that affect scheduling in this kind of world?
Well, I think we're seeing a trend towards DVRs with multiple tuners, so I would not, I think that the two-tuner issue is short-term. And I think there's more content being made available in a VOD environment as well, and so you don't have to use your DVR anymore to watch time-shifted content. In fact, people watch it all the time on Netflix or Hulu and on all of the TV Everywhere applications as well as the systems-based VOD services. So that's all growing, I think, faster than DVR right now.
I wonder if that means that we're going to see more live television during prime time, and some of those dramas or the different genres that consumers are going to time shift. It's probably going to shift, as John mentioned, to a more consumer-supported format.
Well, there's a lot more live sports on than there used to be.
Right.
It's true, and one of the things that I think really is at issue for any content provider is really how do you brand in this environment? Because it's a reality that many of us in the business and many of you know, which is very few people watch networks. It's changed with the rise of niche and cable, but most people watch shows. The unfortunate issue with most DVR environments, and actually some newer ones are better at this, and certainly some of the console providers, Microsoft and PlayStation, are doing a great job of branding content in their environments. But these environments tend to strip brand away from the actual programmer or network that created it, and that has a double down negative effect on business models downward through the system and back up, which puts, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but a at-risk position for the funding of content over the long term.
I think you'll see more like the return of the old soap opera model, where you'll hear everyone say, "Brought to you by Time."
We've actually at Fox Networks, for the last couple of years, been proselytizing what we call the network effect. And so we are insisting that if content is going to appear in a lot of these environments, that things like tune-in information for current series have to be part of the navigation and the UI, so that we drive people back to the network, and we do create that association with the mothership, if you will.
Having the network, the brand stand for something unique and different, and having the content fit under that umbrella is key to that as well. Because if I know that I'm going to get, this kind of content when I go to this network, I'm still going to go there by default. It's going to be one of my, my set, if you will, that I'll experiment with.
But when we were first starting to talk to people about this, people who are building their UIs, we were like the first company out there really pushing this. And we have since, I think, gotten a lot more traction from other programmers on this topic. But we were kind of surprised that it wasn't already a bigger issue. Because we have FX, for example, right? An FX show is different than a National Geographic Channel show. They could have the same name even, but they're going to be different. And we think that's really important to the consumer, so that they know what the experience they're likely to get will be. And I'm sure Starz, you guys probably have an opinion about that too, but that to us is really critical, that we maintain the ability to launch and create hits. Because as you were saying, there's a lot more shows that aren't huge hits than shows that are, and one of the ways we create hits is through that kind of lead-in that you just don't have in an on-demand environment. So that's where network effect stuff comes in to play.
And to piggyback on the network effect, I don't know that there's the risk. I don't see the risk for the network brand. If you think back to video on demand, that was the same concern as well. How are these networks going to have a brand in a VOD environment? But sure enough, we found homes for the different networks on the VOD menu. So you can go into the Starz VOD menu. The same thing will happen in an ads and apps environment. I believe there's a Starz apps that will sit on everybody's computer. So I think time shifting doesn't necessarily have to mean dilution of the brand.
No, I didn't say it necessarily means it, but if you look at, there's a wide array of DVRs out there, and you described an optimum DVR for brand positioning. If everybody assumes optimality for the industry, that would be a great outcome for everybody, but I'm not so sanguine. So it's just a point that I brought up for the group to consider, because of the range of experiences and the lack of quality UI that's existed in the television industry for so many years.
Okay, John, why don't you pick the next category?
Well, not being a Jeopardy expert, I have to try for something that's close to home. So content and networks, please, and thank you for the sound effects, for $1,000.
All right. So in this future scenario, 90% of viewing occurs on connected devices and televisions, enabling simultaneous cross-platform access.
So when I look at this, I say to myself, okay, what's different about this world than a world where I grew up in, which was, very few channels in broadcast. And when I look at this set of these pieces of information, I get actually very excited, because what's behind this connected viewing experience is actually a social fabric, a two-way interactive ecosystem that allows content producers and networks to actually be in contact either overtly, or explicitly, or implicitly with their consumers. And for many, many, many years, this goes way back to the founding of cable TV in the 50s, really television networks that were, I should say, cable television networks, let me clarify, have had very little direct relationship to their consumer. Broadcast networks have owned stations and been able to transmit directly to consumers. Even they had very little data, ex-Nielsen, about what was going on in those homes. So when you think about people looking at a fabric of connected devices, from a large screen in front of you to multiple devices using a laptop, at the same time you have your TV on, maybe it's a tablet, maybe it's you're watching on a mobile phone. The fact that the device and the content can now seamlessly switch from display to communication is really interesting. So you develop from this a social relationship, either producer or network, and consumer, to the content, to maybe the brand provider, to the talent that produces shows or is in shows. And that's a uniquely new proposition in television, which augurs a tremendous change in opportunity for the entire business. One of which is to think of TV more like as direct marketing, where you're marketing shows to people through the social fabric, and individuals become advocates for your shows and market to others. That's really exciting compared to what, the ad industry, I think, used to call it spray and pray advertising. And the last thing, and then I'll shut up on this, is that it really has a very different impact, this notion of connectivity and connected viewing, depending on the type of content you're actually watching. One of the things that I was thinking about when we had the prior question or the prior answer up was the fact that you have something on a DVR and it's scripted programming takes away a lot of the serendipity and simultaneous experience, even if you're using social networks. Because if you're at home watching a DVR program of a show that aired 8 weeks ago, besides having some leaderboard system telling your friends what you're watching, you don't get that same social dynamic. So a lot of connected viewing will play out differently whether you're watching dramatic series, non-scripted, sports, news, and other types of programming, how-to shows and the like. So I think we have really just not even entered the first inning of understanding the second screen or simultaneous connected viewing experience tied to big data and social and all the other things for scripted. I think we're further along for sports and non-scripted, just in terms of, and especially ad-supported versus, I work in a non-ad supported world. So I think this is going to be an incredibly exciting future, though one not without challenges for the business. Sorry for the long.
John, one of the points you made is this convergence of the different types of uses of media, social, entertainment, and gaming. When we look at Xbox, one of the way we categorize the way in which people use Xbox is we break it down into 3 categories. Are they gaming, or are they consuming a program or a show, which is entertainment, or are they doing something like Facebook, which is social? Take a guess which one consumes the largest amount of their time today. Gaming, entertainment, or social?
Well, entertainment.
It does. It does.
What about transmedia? Is there a there? I mean, this really sets up a way to have richer storytelling that really could maybe drive live viewing.
I love the transmedia concept, and the greatest transmedia creators are the people who create games, no doubt. And A-level console games is where it starts. The problem for most of the traditional scripted television world is that the type of mind that has to deal with transmedia is not one person or one mind, it's multiple minds. And in the old days and today, there's still a person called a showrunner who creates a TV show and then maybe has a writer's room, which is the American model. They don't do that in other parts of the world. And they all write the shows, the episodes, and they're delivered. Transmedia has a very, very complex, it doesn't have to be, I should say, but in general, there's a notion of complexity to it that somehow hasn't seeped in yet into the DNA of traditional entertainment companies that are video media focused first. I think literally, people who are focusing on, the game console, even advertising where you can start using it across, ads across platforms, and targeted networks have a real opportunity here.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for transmedia. When we're working with Starlight Runner, you have to think about it. I mean, part of the problem is that you really have to start this conversation in the writer's room. And so, like with some of our properties, we sit down and we create not only the character and story arc for the first season or first couple of seasons, but kind of like a universe, a show universe. And if your showrunner or your writer's team is able to frame it in a really detailed way, you have transmedia creators who can port the stories to different types of environments and different platforms. When we were looking at it, it's interesting because it depends on what genre and how engaged the different shows are. We like to say, something like Walking Dead. Like if you're watching a show and you want to know what's happening outside on the other end of on the other side of the door, that's where you could have a universe and you could build that out on another platform. Or if you have a reality show where we talk about there's either extreme situations and normal characters or extreme characters and normal situations. So however you engage with that show, you can either be a fly on the wall. So say you're following, not like that I like to watch it, but if you're watching Real Housewives and you want to follow a particular character, you could do that on a different platform. Or you want to sit and, I don't know, be in the bar or be in one of their favorite restaurants and just see what goes on in a day-to-day aspect. It really takes voyeurism to the next level. But again, there's a great potential for transmedia, but I agree you have to start at the beginning and you have to think that out. But in that future, I think it's exciting. It's incredible what you can create and what the potential is.
Okay, great. Next we have Pat. Pat, what
All right.
category?
Surprisingly, I will take advertising for 1,000.
Shocking. Right. The majority of large brand advertisers are trying to create their own content. American Express, are you still in the room? I mean, this is a reality.
Yeah, and it relates to our first discussion. I think there will continue to be a world where we're going to shove stuff in front of people's faces to get them to watch something. And there'll be different ways that people will be able to avoid a lot of that, but not all of that. And some of the stuff we shove in front of their face will actually be really good, so they'll want to watch it. But beyond that, I mean, content, I believe, in a variety of ways is really where things are at now and where they need to be at moving forward. Brands need to create things that people are inviting into their lives and not just trying to dodge in various aspects of their life. So, and the funny thing on this one is that there hasn't been more success. I think it's really odd because you've got TV networks who, are used to making great content, across network and cable. You've got advertising agencies that are used to making good content, albeit in small little bites. And we have yet to be able to connect the dots in those organizations to be able to create content that comes from a brand that people want to watch that's not an advertising. And I think part of it is, we still have legacy sales forces in place that sell things a traditional way, and their livelihood depends on not necessarily creating the content creators with the brands and letting ideas and creativity happen there. So I think that's one of the things that gets in the way right now of more success in this area.
Do you think that ad agencies don't have people in their staff that really understand the television business? Like, would it help if there was a little more crossover there?
There absolutely would, absolutely would. But I think getting the right people together would be one way to do that. So, you could educate people in the advertising business if they actually got to spend time with some of the, the producers at networks and the production companies that the networks work with. I think that would be one, there would be a lot of education, frankly, that would go back and forth on that. And we could end up with, there's been some examples of it, certainly. Chipotle as one example where they created a little piece of content that really wasn't an ad, it really wasn't content, it kind of lived somewhere in between. Certainly Coca-Cola has been, famous for their forays into this space. Forbes magazine, for God's sake, on the print side of the world has actually, I think, been more progressive in working with advertisers and working with brands to create content than most of the folks in the TV space.
Where does that budget come from? So on the ad side, if I want to, I'm at El Rey Network, and I want to encourage advertisers to create more branded content. Now, is that something that's going to take away from their spot buys? Is that going to be a different category of spending?
Yeah, it depends on the client. Some clients are pretty progressive in kind of their budgeting and how they allocate dollars to different types of outreach. Some are still very traditional and have their set advertising and then other budgets. But I think engaging in those conversations and if there's good ideas and if there's ways to have brands invited into someone's live, they will find ways to pay for it.
It just seems ironic that networks, or at least ones that are ad-supported, are really trying to do whatever they can to get advertisers to spend money on the content they create. And then you have advertisers who are trying to create their own content. And why don't they just all get along? Why don't they work together more? Or is that driven by agencies?
I guess you can point the finger at a lot of places. Having worked on both sides, the networks are making money the old-fashioned way. They're still making money. And it's hard to change a system if you're still bringing in dollars and you're able to increase it 5% this year and 5% the next year. There's not a lot of people jumping up and down to change it if the money's still coming in the traditional way.
But also, don't forget that the way networks are put together is that they buy a lot of their programming, right? So they don't produce 100% of the shows. No, maybe somebody does, but I don't know who does. We buy stuff from our own studio, from other studios, and from independent production companies. And so there isn't really a production staff, that you could sort of allocate 20% of their time to creating ads for big buyers. I guess you could, but it's just sort of, it's a little disjointed already how the programming schedule gets put together. So I'm not sure how that would work, but what do you think?
I would think connecting with the production companies when I was at Travel Channel, there was 6-7 production companies that did the bulk of our work. And they were really good production companies. And I think connecting them with the producer from the network and the brands, and matching them up correctly could produce some amazing stuff.
Just one thing, because I was listening and it popped into my head. There's also the issue of failure, because most shows don't succeed. So most advertisers want to be involved with successful shows. So you have to make a lot of shows to be successful, and a traditional network show, depending on, let's say, call it a drama, could be $3.5–4.5 million an hour once it gets to a certain point. Boy, that's expensive if you're making 13 or 26 of those. So there's that issue as well, on top of all of the difficulties you all described.
Good point. David.
Okay, I will take emerging platforms for big money 2,000.
I always wondered why they didn't start at the bottom and go up when I watch Jeopardy. It bugs me when they don't do that. So thank you. Okay, 60% of viewing is consumed on a small screen, tablet-sized or smaller. And of course, we have some supporting data there. 52% of US viewers do not consider the television to be their primary screen. This comes from a study that we did called The New Age of Video. And again, it's the millennials and the plurals that are driving this movement. David.
So the question is, where did all my adults 18 to 34 go? And they're moving to smaller screens. And so at Microsoft, we sell across 4 screens. We have Xbox on the big screen. We have MSN.com, which is predominantly on the PC. We have a Surface, which is a tablet device, and we have a Windows Phone. And to achieve a marketer's goal, typically they're looking to reach an age gender demo, 25 to 54, for example. So we'll run a campaign, but we will look to optimize the younger audiences on the smaller screens typically. Now, Xbox skews a little toward male, but you have to look across all the screens and understand that the traditional TV buying demos are not necessarily going to translate to smaller devices.
Can you put your data slide back up? Because with that comment, I just was thinking about the fact that TVs and the sidecar boxes around them, whether they're set-tops or otherwise, are really walled gardens for service offerings or billing relationships, cable, satellite, and telco, Kindle Fire, Apple TV, Xbox, and the like. If the future were something like this, where let's just say we take the DVR question and we say all the content that can be available to people is going to come from the cloud. It can be metered out to the cloud live. We could use a multicast world, and sports could be done that way. But it's all coming to the cloud, and the device you hold in your hand or carry in your pocket is really your remote control for the cloud. People would probably think differently about what their primary device is, because it wouldn't be about device, it would be about what display did you want to look at your content at that moment. So part of why we get this today, I believe, is because the battles and the business models which drive all of this are played out through either the distribution layer, the box layer of around the non-cable satellite and telco, what they used to call premise equipment, and the content layer. I'm simplifying dramatically. So maybe in a future where there's more content control, more targeting, advertising that people want to watch, all of the positive things that we've said, people will just think of what's the optimum screen for the type of content that they're looking at, their sociability at that moment, and their emotional, desire to look at something small or large, personal or in a broader setting.
Yeah, I actually think the 60% number is unrealistic. That, in my opinion, if you were going to see 60% of viewing on small devices, that would portend a drop in how much content was being consumed. Because I think part of what leads to the huge number of hours that people watch on TV is the fact that you turn it on and you probably don't pay that much attention to it. It's not like you're sitting there. Not like people do lots of different things. We all know that. So I don't think you can do that with a personal device like an iPad or a phone. You're not so inclined to just turn it on and let it run. So I don't think this could happen, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think what seems really exciting about that number, I would be excited if I were an advertiser, because I think part of this question is where are they viewing it? So are they viewing it in a small screen and they're still sitting in their living room, or are they more active? So are they closer to a point of sale where I could send them a coupon, or I could remind them, it's been a month, here's a great shoe sale. It's connecting, it's bringing advertisers and connecting them in a potentially more relevant way that I would find really interesting.
And one thing that would help that, this may sound sort of on a tangent, but I think it would help, is if there were some sort of ubiquitous Wi-Fi. Because one of the problems you really have is on wide area networks, like on AT&T and Verizon, for whatever reason that you would like to point to, spectrum shortages or issues of network contention, you have data caps that don't really allow you to watch TV or video in the way that you do on a big screen. A gig an hour, right? Because the networks that we have today, these LTE networks, they're not optimizing the amount of data going down to the device based on the size of the device. They optimize based on the actual bandwidth end to end. So if the device can receive, 15 megabits on an LTE connection, they'll send a 7 megabit, stream. And you don't need that for watching, I don't care, on whatever, an OLED, 12 retina screen. You just don't need that much data. So you run up against that 5 gig cap. So your point's a great one, but how amazing that would even be, and maybe the number would be higher because of ubiquitous connectivity.
That's when Google's in every market.
Yeah.
With balloons and drones.
So I'm just fascinated by, optimizing for the small screen with video. You shoot closer, but then you got HD. So if you watch it on a big screen, then actors will age much more quickly. So anyway, Dawn, you're next.
Let's see. I will take viewing behaviors for 1,000.
Half of all drama series are binge viewed. Binge viewing, an extension of some of the other conversations we've had.
I think this is going to have a big impact on a network's ability to schedule, how relevant scheduling becomes, how relevant primetime becomes, and then what types of genres we show on the network, if it's a drama series. So again, are you going to see more live television and more drama series on more platforms like Netflix or Xbox? And then what's even interesting is when that binge viewing occurs, right? So sometimes binge viewing is good. So if you say binge viewing with Breaking Bad between seasons 3 and 4, it meant that the live viewing went from 3 million to 10 million the next season. So there's a lot of potential both ways. I think it's going to disrupt the model. And I think we're probably about halfway there.
The two things that this raises questions for me is, as the content owner, how do I think about promoting my drama now? Because I can't just promote it date and time. I've got to think about longevity of promotion, which is going to impact the business. But then also, as an advertiser who wants to buy exposure in a weekly episode, that's no longer the case. So I've got to think about, as an advertiser, if something's going to be binge viewed over a 24-hour period, does that impact my interest in that show?
So we are having to wrap up. Were there any takers wanting to be put on the spot? Did we get any? Okay, great. So I'm going to advance to, right. So we're going to have to really do rapid fire here. All right, this is the question. So maybe bring up the house lights. Okay, 30 seconds or less, one at a time. And what's going to happen is I want you to state the very concise question that you would answer, that you would ask to this answer. And so I actually do want you to state it in the form of a question. First is Ben Holland. Yes, and the panel will vote on the winners. And then you can choose from the turntable or the Oban. So Ben Holland. The question.
On the mic.
Over-the-top services have penetrated. It's gone crazy. It's everywhere. Everybody's using it, and it's really accounting for the majority of all viewing. Everything's over the top. So what would be the biggest question affecting the industry?
Can we turn the mic on? Is there audience mic? Audience mic?
Okay, let's move on to Bill Shepard. And if you think of it, we'll come back to you. Bill.
What data supports
Audience mic?
what data supports the best possible business case for service providers moving to over-the-top nationwide coverage?
Thank you. Jeff Katz.
Audience mic. Russell, audience mic.
I love that we're
Check,
still
check.
passing the mic. It's not working.
Now it's working. Okay, the question is, what will happen 2 years after the Supreme Court decides that Aereo is legal?
Good question.
Good question.
Alex Liston.
He's the guy before Alex.
Yeah, I too signed up before I realized what I was signing up for. Kind of like what Jeff said. Yeah, so I'm going to just defer to Jeff on this one.
And Olga Show.
Yes, being international host or person who asks questions, I would ask right away, which homes we're talking about, which country. And then I would like to know how we spend that time viewing. Are we watching ads? Are we watching drama? Are we watching comedy? And what we are doing through that. Because even my mom used small TV screen or telephone screen, now watch programs. And before she was crying, saying why I'm putting her through hell. And now she loves it. She doesn't even watch TV, unfortunately. She watches TV through the phones and computers. So here's my question, which country and what we are doing when we are viewing and from where we are viewing.
Okay. So panelists.
The question I didn't hear was what happened after Microsoft acquired Comcast? That was the one I was going to vote for.
I want to know what's the other 30% of time.
Live viewing? It's hypothetical.
Well, live viewing could be on OTT. I was assuming live was on OTT services.
true.
So we need to huddle and decide?
Or just outright, which questions do you like best? We'll go through.
Can I see the list of names?
I don't remember who. So it was Aereo. It was,
I think I liked Bill Shepard's question best, myself.
okay.
My vote's for Jeff.
Jeff?
Jeff.
My vote's for Olga because she was the only one who thought which country it is. And it's completely different in every country. And if you look in Europe and you go territory by territory, you do not have the same constraints on OTT in those markets. You may have 8 providers in France. It's completely different in the Netherlands. It's completely different in Germany. So I like the nuance to her answer or questions.
All right. So the winner is, who did we say? Jeff, number 1, and it was a tie for number 2.
There's a second prize?
There is a second prize.
I would vote to give that to
But as we do this, any last words from the panel?
Can't you give another one for the record? The runner-up, does the runner-up get a prize?
Yeah, the runner-up gets a prize too.
There you go. This is a 14-year-old single malt whiskey called Oban.
We're not getting audited.
So this.
We need to close. We have to close. Do you have a
Okay.
runner-up?
So out of the tiebreaker of Olga or.
We already voted for someone else, so I guess you
No, you have to tiebreak from that.
Well, I'm still voting for Bill. Sorry. Sorry, Olga.
Beautiful box.
I know. That did sway me, I have to say.
We'll flip a coin. Come up to the stage afterwards, we'll flip a coin. Thanks for a great show, by the way.
Thank you. No,
thanks
no
to the panel.
takers? Olga, you get the prize. You're having the
Tracy
most
did the
chutzpah.
tiebreaker.
This is a turntable that converts all of your old albums, if you have them, into digital music. I know it's not TV, but it was so super cool, I had to get it. There you go.
Those of us who voted for Jeff will be coming to visit you to sample your prize.
Congratulations. Okay, everybody, the show is over. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our sponsors, Adobe, MPP Collective, my staff, Rentrack, Rovi, Nuance. I don't have my list. But thank you so much. I will thank all of the sponsors online, and I hope you had a great time. That's what I care about.